Hi everybody, welcome to our Collective Awakening podcast. Myself, Stephen and Chris will welcome you on this amazing episode of Everything Astrology. I've been so excited about this because we've been trying to find somebody that we can connect with, and we've met an amazing gentleman called Kev. Welcome to our podcast. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Stephen. My name's Kevin Rowan Drewitt. I'm secretary of the Blackpool-based Northern Lights Astrological Society. I've been an astrologer for over 30 years, and I'm very pleased to be here today.
Amazing. And you're very welcome to our podcast. And I think we'd like to start off with all our podcasts is a little bit about yourself. You know, what's took you into this journey of all things astrology?
Well, it all started in my teenage years, as things do. I used to do a paper round, and when I was doing the paper round, I used to read all the horoscopes, you know, in the papers. Yeah. I used to read them in all the different papers and all that. So that sort of got me interested in it like that. And then in 1980, I was lent a book called Linda Goodman's Sun Signs, which is it's sold over 2 million copies, been number one on the American bestsellers. And I read all about myself. I'm an Aquarian. And it all had like the male Aquarian, the female Aquarian, what the sort of jobs and friends Aquarians have, and what signs they're compatible with, and that sort of got me interested. Then during the 80s, I didn't really do much in the way of astrology. I wasn't that sort of interested. I got interested in other things, and then when I moved to Blackpool in 1990 to be with my partner, Kathy, she was into astrology and she got me much more interested in it. She had books on it and we got into it. And I said, well, why don't we, is there a local society? Because being an Aquarian, I like to be with friends and being part of a group. So that's what I did. So I found out that there was this group called Northern Lights, and they met in Cleveland, and we went along, and they said, "Oh, you want to learn astrology properly." Barbara, who was she was the secretary, she's now the chairperson of the group, Barbara Giles. She was doing evening classes. Funnily enough, at a school, there's St Mary's in Blackpool, which I ended up working at for 23 years later on. But we went to these evening classes for about 13 weeks and learned how to do birth charts and interpret them and all this. And so we then spent the next couple of years drawing up charts by hand and doing our children's charts and friends and all that. And it just got more and more into it. And it just sort of escalated from there.
Wow, amazing story. So there'll be people...
Synchronicity, that is best.
Yeah.
Just things flowing.
So there'll be people watching the podcast probably for the first time, and a lot of people are interested in astrology. So what's your interpretations of what astrology encompasses? What is it all about?
Right. Well, astrology is a very big subject. The thing that most people know about astrology is the horoscopes that I just mentioned that you see in the magazines and the newspapers and everything. But it's a double-edged sword, because a lot of people think that's all there is to astrology, and how can one group of people, that's millions, billions probably across the world, all have the same thing that's going to happen to them one day and on that day sort of thing and all that. So people tend to sort of think, what a load of rubbish, and that's all there is to it. And on the other hand, although that keeps people interested in astrology, so it keeps astrology in the public eye, because people think that's all there is, it does damage. But the thing is, astrology is a very serious subject. It's one of the oldest sciences going. It's been going for thousands and thousands of years. And if it didn't have the truth in it, then it wouldn't exist anymore. Especially since we've had the age of science, the age of reason, and all that for the last few hundred years, and all that. But there are many branches of astrology. You know, there's birth charts, so there's natal astrology, which is just about the person and their personal chart, which is their personal map for their journey through life. Obviously, you have free will. You can choose how you follow that map whichever way you want. one person's murderer is another person's surgeon. We have this thing that, like, if you give somebody a knife, for somebody like I might stab you and kill you with it, and somebody else would be a surgeon would open you up and cut the cancer out and save your life.
Wow.
And the knife isn't the actual problem. It's the problem. It's
the person.
It's the person. It's the person. It's up to you to decide what to do with it. So you have natal astrology. You also have what we call mundane astrology, which is about what's happening in world events. And this is probably actually how astrology started. Was the people back in the day, thousands of years ago, they didn't have Coronation Street or television to watch. So what were they? At night, all they could do really was observe the stars and watch. Yeah. And they came to notice there were stars that were wandering. They were planet. The word planet is Greek and means wanderer, because they've noticed that some of the stars used to move, and they noticed that when certain stars were in certain constellations and did certain things happened on Earth. So a king or an emperor might have an astrologer who would tell them when was a good time to go to war, or if there was going to be a famine and things like that. So it goes with the adage, as above, so below.
Yeah.
So they're observing what's happening in the night sky and what events on Earth. They were pulling the two together. This all started in the Middle East, and gradually it spread into Egypt. And then when the Romans invaded Egypt, it got into Rome, and then gradually the Romans came to England, and so gradually astrology moved. It's Western astrology, all moved into the West. Although the Indians have another form of astrology, and the Chinese have another form of astrology.
They do, yeah.
So which are completely different to Western astrology. And I'm a Western astrologer. That's what I do. We also have electional astrology.
Wow.
Which is if a couple are deciding to get married, then the astrologer would look at what is the best time, what day, what's the best time for them to get married.
Yeah.
Anyway, me and my ex-wife actually did this, and we worked out it would be 2:30 on a Wednesday in back in August the 12th. And but what actually happened was, as these things do, was the previous wedding party overran, and we actually got married at 3:10. So it completely altered the chart, but not to worry.
The universe had another plan.
That's right. You have to go with the flow, so to speak. So that's, and countries have astrology, because countries are born and die just the same as the stars do, and we do. So in fact, England is Aries, Wales is Gemini, Scotland is Cancer, and Ireland is Taurus.
Really?
Very interesting.
And Spain is Taurus as well, because they're bullfighting and all that, Taurus the bull, and all that. It's quite interesting, all that. Although that again isn't something that I do. What I do in Northern Lights, as I'm also, apart from secretary, I'm also editor of the quarterly Icarus online newsletter.
Yeah.
And on the front page, it comes out the solstices and the equinoxes, and on the front page is the chart of the equinox or the solstice, and using that I make predictions for the next 3 months as to what planet is in which house and all that. I don't want to get.
Are we talking about here as the collective, as humanity? It's sort of a chart.
Well, the chart is for Blackpool, so it's really sort of what we in Blackpool and obviously the surrounding area can expect to be in focus in the coming months, whether it be rail strikes or post office problems or air traffic control, what's happening with the king and the prime minister. For example, this is another branch of mundane astrology, and in that the sun in the mundane chart is the king and the prime minister. So whereabouts it's in the chart and what other planets are aspecting it, making contact with it. we make a prediction what's going to be happening to them in the next 3 months. So are they in for a good time or a bad time, or
Wow,
it's
intriguing.
yeah,
It really is.
Yeah, each of the planets represents a different people and different aspects and the different of life, and each of the houses, there's 12 houses in a chart, and each of them has a different meaning as well.
Are they corresponding to the planets, then the 12 houses to the planets?
Well, in a birth chart, I know it gets a bit technical. When you get really into astrology, it is very, very technical, right? Basically, you have what we call the 10 planets, right?
Yeah.
Which includes the Sun and the Moon, and then Mercury right out to Pluto. We still have Pluto in astrology, and then you have 12 houses, which is, if you imagine that it's like a pizza and it's divided into 12 different sections, and those houses are the 12 signs of the zodiac, but they're the 12 signs, and then you have the 12 houses, and the first house is about the personality. The second house is your values and your resources. Your third house is about your siblings and your neighborhood and your early education, and it goes right round to the 12th house, which we tend to call the dustbin, because it's the house of the secrets. So if you've got a lot of planets in the 12th house, you're a very secretive person.
I don't think I'm like that. I'm too nosy. But I wanted to ask you, which I'll pass on to Chris in a minute, is about reincarnation and how astrology is connected to that. Because obviously there must be reason, if we are governed, when we reincarnate, we're governed by the astrological chart, by the star sign and the houses, that there must be a reason where we reincarnate to, and that we take on that energy. So what's your thoughts on that, on the birthing side, as we reincarnate? Being a Capricorn myself, I must have chosen to hold those characteristics and personalities that will govern me in my learning and my earthly life.
Yeah. There's the main theory in astrology for astrologers that do believe in reincarnation is that you're born into this. You're given that chart when you're born as the lessons that you have to learn in this life, and where you're going to continue to have that life. And then when you pass over, you reach a point in the chart where you've achieved everything that needs to be done, so to speak. And then you're reborn with a new chart, where you have to carry on with the new lessons that you didn't learn in your previous life, right? There's actually two points in the chart that talk about your past life and this life, and they're called the moon's nodes. I say it gets very technical.
Wow.
The moon's nodes are quite simply the point where the moon crosses the path of the earth as it goes around the sun. Yeah. And there's two. There's the north node and the south node. In China, they call them the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. But the south node is what you're bringing into this life from your previous life, and your north node is where you need to go with this life, the lessons that you need to learn. So there is that is incorporated into.
Yeah, and that could, I suppose, that could bring a huge amount of clarity to someone when they're seeking that information as well.
Absolutely.
Sort of your connection and knowing where you've come from in a way. You know, I'm a big believer that reincarnation itself can answer so many questions we have in this life, can put things into perspective. So that's just even expanding that even further, isn't it? Really, you know, our connection not just to the earth, but to the universe, to the cosmos, to the planets.
Well, that's right. This is a marvelous thing. I can remember when I mentioned the 80s. In the 80s, I lived in Norfolk, and I lived in a little town. And at night, I used to come home. And before I went in, I used to lie on the grass and look up because we had no light pollution there. Yeah, I live in Blackpool; you can't see the
stuff. I was going to ask you about that, because I was saying that years ago, when you were talking at the beginning, they wouldn't have the amount of light pollution.
That's right.
So,
and it's quite to see the Milky Way in all its glory is fantastic. And I used to lie on, although I wasn't a great believer in astrology at the time, just to be part of the universe, to see all those stars, and you feel so infinitesimally small. And what's the big picture? What's it all about? So, but the great thing is with astrology is that you do learn more about yourself and who you are and where you're going, and the lessons to be learned in this life, and what sort of partner you would seek, and what sort of relationship you like, what sort of job what career would be good for you. All that is shown in the birth chart.
So in the very old times, obviously our ancestors would have had a much deeper connection with the earth and the astrological systems. That would people seek would there be astrologists sort of in the tribe, in the village, where people would go and seek this kind of advisement?
Well, the main people that had astrologers in those days was like the king or the queen.
Okay.
Because in those days, to be an astrologer, you'd have to have a very advanced knowledge of mathematics and the movements of the planets and everything, and know about the constellations and all this. So there'd be because to do it all by hand, having done it by hand myself, it's very, very complicated. Even I had the aid of charts and maps and books and things, which they didn't. They had to do it all themselves by observation. So the only people that would have had their birth chart done in those days would have been like the king or the queen and all that. Most people probably just wondered at the night sky and all that, and made observations of certain things, especially things like Venus and Mercury, and as well as morning star and evening star and that sort of thing. But other than that, it was very much a science and an art for the very few, the elite.
I guess the people then would have had big control over the land then, wouldn't they? And what they said. And would they have been the king, queen, very much governed then by the astrological chart?
They would be advised, yes. They would obviously use their own experience and intuition and that sort of thing. But as they had other advisors about other things as well. But obviously, the astrologer was taken as seriously as the other advisors.
What I find quite interesting is even in our modern history, if you look back to significant dates, what was going on those dates astrologically as well, even when certain big announcements have been made to the world and things like that.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting. The most accurate birth recordings that are done by the royal family.
Right.
The royal family.
We told this the other day, weren't we?
Yeah, the royal family. When a child is born into the royal family, its birth time is recorded to the second, because they use astrology.
Right.
Although they don't make a big thing of it, I do happen to know. I mean, it's well known that Princess Diana used a few astrologers.
Yeah, there's quite a big link going back with the royal family, with astrologers, and also the spiritual readings and such as well, clairvoyance, oracles.
Queen Elizabeth I, of course, had John Dee as her astrological advisor.
Look, I know the Queen Mother was very big on astrology as well, and she did a lot about spiritual reading. So was Queen Victoria as well, with readings and things. It just shows you that the knowledge and the teachings are there. But there's a lot of things happening at the moment on the earth and the collective, and everyone's talking about we're moving into this new phase of Aquarius.
Oh, the age of Aquarius, yeah.
I think it would be great to sort of delve in a little bit deeper. The last 4 years, we've been through a bit of a turbulent time, good times, bad times, all part of the collective.
It's been interesting, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think, to say the least.
So we're moving into this new phase. So can you tell us a little bit what's happening?
Well, would you like me to talk about the age of Aquarius?
Yes.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
People... I think until the late 60s and the coming of the hippie movement and hair, with the age, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius song, which is astrological rubbish, by the way.
All right, anybody who's in it, that's that guy.
Because the moon is in the 7th house, 2 hours every day, and Jupiter aligns with Mars all the time. So there's nothing significant about that. Right. But what the age is, what they call it, it's called the Great Year, right? And it lasts over 26,000 years, right? And because there's 12 signs of the zodiac, each age lasts about just over 2,000 years, right? And we are living depending on which astrologer you talk to, they'll tell you the age of Aquarius has already started, or it started 200 years ago, or it'll start in 2 centuries' time. Yeah. But most astrologers agree that the age of Aquarius started around about the late 60s, right? Yeah. Now, before them, it's been the age of Pisces, which has been the age of religion, because you've had Jesus, Muhammad, all the major religions have come about in the last 2,000 years. Yeah. Roughly, right? And it's interesting. I mean, Jesus' name in Greek is Ichthys, which means fish, and because it's been the age of Pisces, and Pisces is the fish.
Wow!
There's been quite. Before that was the age of Aries, and that was all the time of all the empires and the wars, and all that. Because Aries is a very well, it's ruled by Mars, the god of war, right? And before that was the age of Taurus, which was when we started farming, because Taurus is an earth sign, and Taurus the bull it's very much a very earthy thing, and it rules agriculture. So you had that. And before that, it was the age of Gemini, which was when we first started getting communication, right? The reason anybody listening to this go, hang on, we're going backwards here through the zodiac, right? And this is because of a thing called precession, which is a little bit complicated. But imagine that the Earth is very much like a spinning top, right? Now, if you remember those spinning tops that used to, and they used to wobble, didn't it? You remember that they used to wobble? Well, the Earth does that as well. The Earth has this wobble. Well, not so much that we feel it. But what it means is that the sign that is at the spring, that is on the eastern horizon at the spring equinox in March the 21st, roughly. It's great that sign is gradually it's moving backwards as it goes because of the wobble of the Earth. So 2,000 years ago, Pisces was the sign that was rising, and 4,000 years ago it was Aries, and now it's Aquarius, and that's what this meaning of this age of Aquarius is all about. Now, Aquarius is all about inventions and technology and humanitarian stuff. So what we've seen is in the later part of the 20th century was the space race and computers. We had walking on the moon, and the cell phones, personal computers, all this technology has all gone absolutely mad, hasn't it, in the last 50 years or so. And this is very much to do with Aquarius. So that's why most astrologers believe we are in the age of Aquarius now. Yeah. And in 2,000 years' time, we'll be in the age of Capricorn.
Oh, it's Capricorn's coming there.
That's your next.
But as to say what's going to happen in the next 2,000 years, that's a very big question. Because that's how long the age of Aquarius is going to last. So the world is going to be a very different place. I mean, you don't need astrology to know that. But,
so what does Capricorn, when the rise of Capricorn happens in 2,000 years, what do Capricorns do?
Well, Capricorn is very much about very down to earth, much more it's a very practical sign, and it's very much to do with money and being the boss and organizing things. And so it's going to be I mean, obviously we're not going to be around to experience it.
It would be reincarnated, wouldn't it? Maybe.
So I think it will be a much more austere time. who knows what the world's going to be like in 2,000 years? It's so difficult to predict, isn't it? If 2,000 years ago, what would they be predicting that life would be like now? You know, I'm sure they wouldn't. They wouldn't, unless you were Nostradamus or someone.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that aspect of what you talked about when you said not only from what's been read that it's the age of Aquarius, but what we're seeing as well with the technology. So,
that's the observation thing.
Sort of in the most positive way, the observation sort of aligning everything and confirming. And I suppose it's quite it's scientific in that way.
Yes. Aquarius is very much about science.
Yeah.
You know, science and inventions and inventing things for the common good. Is it? You know, hopefully we're going to see a lot more technology. You know, finding cures for cancer and things like that.
Beneficial for mankind.
As the technology advances and all that during the age of Aquarius, people should be living longer. You know, and the technology can help us. You know, can move us forward, make us better people.
Yeah.
So what's happening with the energy then? What energy is Aquarian bringing in? Because there's been a lot of sort of shifts on the energy side with things being revealed in the last 4 or 5 years, and it will continue to do so. So where is Aquarian's influence coming in then?
Well, the big influence that's going to happen now, which is starting now, is that the planet Pluto has entered Aquarius, and it's going to be there for a long time.
How long are you talking about?
I have my notes because this is a very technical thing, and I don't want to get the information wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, here it is. Pluto. It's going to be there. Oh, that's when Pluto was there. What I can tell you about what Pluto. What I tell you about is what Pluto has been in Aquarius before. Pluto has a 248-year orbit around the Sun. It takes a long time, and it stays in each sign different amounts of time.
Wow.
Now Pluto is about transition and power. Okay, it has a very transforming effect when anybody has a Pluto transit, and when I talk about a Pluto transit, I mean Pluto is making some contact with some other planet in your birth chart. That's a very personal thing, but normally it has a very transforming. It's almost like a rebirth.
Yeah,
because Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth.
Well, right. You feel that's what's happening at the moment, don't you?
Yes.
Things are burning away, like the tower.
Absolutely. But Aquarius is a sign of independence, rebellion, invention, humanitarian. So Aquarians tend to march to the beat of their own drum.
You do, Chris.
It's a bit of a sort of dilemma for Aquarians, because Aquarians like to have lots of friends, but they also like to be very independent.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like in those Sue Townsend, Adrian Mole ones. They want to be rebellious, but they want to fit in, so they wear their red socks under their white socks when they go to school. So Aquarians like to have lots of friends, but they like to be very independent as well. They like to do their own thing, which doesn't sort of. If you like to do your own thing, that doesn't normally when you're friends with you have shared things that you do things together. So it's a little bit of a dilemma for Aquarians.
Yeah.
But if we look back, Aquarius is ruled by the planet Uranus, right? Which again is about rebellion and independence. It's very, very similar, and it's about change, especially sudden change and bolts from the blue and all that. So you've got that sort of Uranian energy coming in with Pluto being in Aquarius, and you also got this transformation of Pluto. And if we look back at the last 4 times that Pluto was in Aquarius, we're talking about 1041 to 1063, and this was when we had the first period of monastic rule. We had Edward the Confessor ending the domination of the Danes, unifying a lot of England. We had the first Westminster Abbey and Lady Godiva rode through Coventry naked on a horse, and which is a very sort of rebellious thing to do.
Yeah.
Also, the astrolabe was invented, which was an instrument that helped people guide by the stars at night. And then 1286 to 1308, we had the Italian Renaissance, the Divine Comedy. Kublai Khan dies, the Mongolian Empire collapses. Leonardo da Vinci invents loads of things,
Yeah, he did.
Like helicopters and parachutes and things. Eyeglasses were invented, and writing paper, and the first printing press, and the spinning wheel. So there's been a lot of invention when Pluto is in Aquarius. And then we go to 1532 to 1553. We had Henry VIII with divorce, and then forming the Church of England, breaking away from the Church of Rome. And then we had the rise of Protestantism. I can't really say that very well. Protestants, with Martin Luther, John Calvin, and Edward VI came to power, and he put Catholics to death. And then Bloody Mary came to power, and she put the Protestants to death. So, and then William Tyndale published the Bible in English for the first time, and Copernicus came up with a heliocentric model of the solar system. This means that he worked out that the planets go around the sun rather than the sun go around the Earth. Helio is Helios, it's the French word for the German word, the Greek word for the sun. Right. Helios. So heliocentric means the universe is based on the planets the solar system is based on the planets going around the sun. Until then, people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that everything went round the Earth.
Wow.
In fact, to this day, Western astrology still works from it's called the geocentric, like geography, Earth. That all the planets and the sun and the moon all go round the Earth. As observed from the Earth, that's what it does look like. We see the sunrise and the sunset, don't we? Where really we know it's really the turning of the Earth. And then if we go on to 1771 to 1798, so as you can see, every time it's about 27 years, 20-something years. We had the French Revolution, the United States breaks away from the UK, George III went mad. We had the Irish Rebellion against British rule, which failed. Slavery started to be abolished. The novel becomes a literary form with people like Daniel Defoe and Henry Fielding. Romance becomes the norm in poetry. We have William Blake. We had the first flight in a hot air balloon with the Montgolfier brothers. Edward Jenner invented the first vaccine, which is quite interesting because we've just had all the COVID vaccine, so history repeating itself. Lavoisier invented modern chemistry. William Herschel discovered Uranus, and of course we also had the Industrial Revolution. So you can see every time that Pluto has been in Aquarius, there's been huge changes in England and also around the world. So what can we expect now?
Yeah.
Well, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius until 2044. So that's quite a while. Again, it's another 20 years, Now, what can we expect? We can expect ideologies affecting religion to change. So I think we're already seeing that.
Definitely, we're seeing a lot of that, yeah.
To some degree, yes. The big technical advances, as I've talked about before, particularly with this thing, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
That's been on the news today. The Chinese have just brought out a new AI app, which is it's only been out a week. It's gone viral in America. It's outselling all the American AI, and Trump is very annoyed about this already. Yeah. Especially that if you ask questions like what happened in Tiananmen Square, it says, sorry, I can't answer that question. So the Chinese have sort of built in a political agenda in this artificial intelligence that it won't answer anything negative about China. But I think artificial intelligence seems to be taking over the world, and this is very much Pluto in Aquarius, because it's about power. You see, power and technology,
power of information.
Yes, indeed. We're also going to see, I believe, a shift in the power from towards the collective rather than the elite. Because Aquarius is very much about the people, humanitarian, and I say friends, and the big collective, the general people, rather than kings and queens and presidents and that sort of thing. So, because Pluto is about power, we should shift away from that.
It's interesting how you put that in, and what's been occurring for me the last 4 or 5 years, even more, is that people moving away from worshipping things and more looking within, discovering what they hold within and holding within collectively. People are coming together or feeling the need to find a tribe or the people and come together as a community.
Indeed, that is what Aquarius is about, and we're going to see this shift. There's definitely been a shift away from more organised religion into people following their own spiritual paths. You hear now, particularly amongst celebrities and people on the television and that, they talk about they're following their spiritual path. They say they're spiritual, they're not religious. They say they're spiritual.
You could hear that at one time,
which would have been unheard of 10, 15, 20 years ago. And this is a movement again. This is Pluto into Aquarius. We're seeing this shift, and also I believe that it's going to show that the days of the plutocrats are numbered. We're going to see a shift away from the people with lots of money having all the power. It's going to move more into the general public.
Well, that would make sense, because there's almost a purge of a lot of nonsense at the minute, and it's everywhere you look. It's not hidden, it's very obvious. People talk about it a lot, but it's almost like it is on the surface. And for me, when something's on the surface, it's on its way out.
Well, one of the big things, of course, in the age of technology, of the age of Aquarius, is the internet. I should have mentioned that earlier, because that has made the world, we've now got a global nation, haven't we? You can talk to your friend in Australia for free, using the internet. And anything that happens, it's on the net and goes viral. Within hours.
And with that sort of freedom of information as well, we can do things like this podcast. Anybody can do it. It's round the world. It's accessible to anyone.
Well, freedom is another word associated with Aquarius. So, Aquarians particularly like to be free. As I said before, they like to march to the beat to their own drum. They don't like being told what to do.
Don't look.
Obviously, you can't go around being an Aquarian doing anything that you want to do, because that's why we have these Capricorn laws to just keep us on track. But Aquarians appreciate that, because it's for the good of all. The laws are there to, on the whole, to benefit everybody, so that we can live in peace.
Balancing each other out.
Yes, indeed.
It's interesting. This is why with us creating here the Purple Mountain, with our signs, you being Aquarius and me being Capricorn, though we're very opposite, we also benefit each other in our approach and everything that we do. We keep ourselves grounded, and I think that makes us a good team, I think.
Yes. In terms of the different zodiac signs, there's nothing more different than the sign that you're next to. So, Capricorn is so different from Aquarius.
Very different.
Right? They're almost like completely different, right? But the thing that's great about Capricorn and Aquarius is that traditionally, before the discovery of Uranus in 1781, Aquarius and Capricorn were both ruled by the planet Saturn. So there's a Saturnian thing. So this is good for business. It's good for organizing. And although Aquarius might come up with some wacky idea, Capricorn can put it into a practical application. so that the two work very well together.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that although I'm an Aquarian, I have Mercury in the sign of Capricorn.
And how does that Mercury dominate that then with your personality?
Well, Mercury in Capricorn gives you a bit like a mind like a computer. You're able to put everything in a pigeonhole and organize things mentally that whereas the Aquarius, the Sun in Aquarius would want to do something a bit mad or something a bit unusual or whatever, but the Capricorn will say, hang on, if you're going to go tightrope walking, you better get some lessons rather than just step onto the tightrope. It gives a sort of organizing. It's very, very useful for me to have Mercury in Capricorn, because otherwise I might go completely off the rails.
Wow, it's so amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, just when we talk about, obviously we talked about the age of Aquarius, the significance of what we're at right now, but in terms of this year, a lot of people, even people as we have the centre and people coming in and out, more people seem to be talking about astrology and the significance, for lack of a better word, more people are looking up than ever. And is that something that's sort of in the midst this year, that is going to be important and significant?
Funny you just say that, because I've got some notes about this year, because 2025 is a very, very significant year.
I'm excited for this. Embrace for the changes.
Because what I mentioned, the lunar nodes, the nodes of the moon earlier. Well, they changed sign in this, well, very recent, in January this year.
Yeah, they did.
Right?
Yeah.
But also Uranus and Neptune and Saturn all changed signs this year. It's very unusual for the outer planet. The outer planets move very slowly. When I say the outer planets, I'm talking about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I mentioned earlier Pluto having 238 years to go around the Sun. Jupiter takes 12 years. Saturn takes 29. Uranus takes 84. And Neptune takes about 163. So they check, because these outer planets move very slowly, they change sign. Saturn only changes sign every 29 years, for example. Uranus changes sign only 84 years. And all these planets, these outer planets, are changing sign this year, which is very, very significant. What did I put? 2025 is not just another year. It's the start of a completely new era.
Wow.
So, also a very interesting thing is that in 2025, Saturn and Neptune are both entering Aries at 0 degrees at roughly the same time. And this is very significant because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So when a planet, outer planet, enters Aries, it's starting a whole new cycle. It's like resetting. It's resetting it. So they start at 0 Aries, and it's going to go 360 degrees round to 30 degrees of Pisces. So it's a start. It's completely start of a new start. So this is quite significant.
You can feel it. It feels like that.
Yeah, it's going to happen in March and May, around the time. Neptune enters Aries in March, and then Saturn enters it in May. But because Saturn moves so slowly, they're both going to be at 0 Aries at the same time. And all these changes. Jupiter's going into Cancer, Uranus into Gemini. It creates an atmosphere of unprecedented novelty. The astrological landscape shifts dramatically. Our focus and priorities completely change. We're entering a brand new chapter. So this is going to be a very, very significant year.
A lot of people have mentioned that, haven't there? A lot of people that have been involved in some kind of spiritual have all felt that 2025 was going to be the big sort of turning point of the energy. And I've been feeling it, and I don't know who's watching the podcast, and I don't know what you've been feeling, just regarding the astrological side. You do feel the energy, and the planets are aligning. What's happening at the moment then with the alignment of the planets?
Well, we've just had well, if we've just had, actually, if you look in the night sky at the moment, you can see quite a few of the planets at the same time. If you've got a telescope, you can see Uranus and Neptune as well, because you can see Uranus with the naked eye, but it's very, very rare, which is why it took a long time for it to be discovered. although a lot of people observed Uranus centuries before it was discovered, but they didn't realise that it was a planet. Even, in fact, William Herschel, when he discovered it in 1781, he thought it was a comet at first. It took a few years before they realised it was an actual planet, and he wanted to name it after King George III, who was on the throne at the time. But the French didn't like that at all, so eventually they came up naming it Uranus, naming it after the Greek god Uranus, which is the god of the sky. Because Uranus is sky blue in colour. But yes, the planet that rules spirituality is Neptune, right? And Neptune shifting from Pisces. Pisces is the sign of religion as well. So we've had, whilst Neptune's been going through Pisces, there's been sort of different religious problems in the world. We've seen it in the Middle East, and Islam and Judaism and stuff. But now that Neptune's entering Aries, it's a new awakening. It's a new start. And so again, we're going to see people turning more to spirituality than organised religion. That's a big shift of Neptune. Yeah, that's something that you can probably feel already.
And even with some of the Catholic religions and such, there's been a lot of exposure of things within that as well, and it's almost like things falling from the perch in a way.
Right. A lot of that has been about Pluto being in Capricorn. Oh. Because one of the things that Pluto does, it brings things that have been hidden to the surface, right? Because Pluto equates with Hades, the god of the underworld, and people, Scorpio, which is the sign that's ruled by Pluto, and so anyone who's very Plutonian or Scorpionic, they like to get to the bottom of things and bring them to the surface. This is the transforming power of Pluto, brings things to the surface. That's why we've seen all the corruption in the banks and the governments and the religion and all that. That Pluto brought all that out. All the time that Pluto was in Sagittarius, everyone was getting away with it.
Yeah,
I was talking to you earlier about Sagittarians like to get away with stuff because they're optimistic. They're ruled by Jupiter. They think they can. So, and they went a bit too far, a bit OTT. Jupiter likes to expand things, and so all these banks, we saw all the banks were lending out money and selling on things and expanding and getting beyond their means. We saw the collapse of the banks and all that. That all happened. All that optimism when Pluto was in Sagittarius changed when Pluto entered Capricorn, and then Capricorn says, "Get real."
Yeah.
This is Saturn saying, get real. Let's look at things really as they are, not through rose tinted spectacles or optimistic things. No. Actually, we've gone too far.
Yeah.
We had the Barings Bank and all that sort of thing, and it all came to something, and it all collapsed. And that was all to do with Pluto in Capricorn. Now Pluto's gone into Aquarius. We're entering more an age where we can all get on with it more. Hopefully, we're going to see more humanitarian. People are going to
come together
more.
For greater good. I think that's what was needed, isn't it? Definitely.
I think you're seeing that already as well, and it's through. I think we've discussed it loads in some of the groups we've had here the last month or so of this. Through these hard times, through things being exposed, actually brings us together.
Yeah,
it seems to bring us together. If there's a war or anything like that, I'm certainly not encouraging wars. If like with the banking collapse when all that happened, and the things that have happened since, but it does bring people together in those times. Yeah. So it's interesting, the two things.
Yeah, very interesting. And I just want to talk a little bit about the sun. So where does the sun's influence then comes into everything? Obviously, the sun is the sun considered the powerhouse of all life and energy, or how does the sun come into the energy side?
Right. Well from a biological sort of thing, without the sun, life wouldn't exist at all. The sun, what people will know is their sun sign, basically, right? Which is just the sign of the zodiac the sun was in at the time you were born. Like we're Aquarians and you're a Capricorn. Everyone knows that their sun sign, even if they know nothing about astrology, they know their sun sign, or their star sign, as it's sometimes called. Now, the sun is the very heart of you. The sun in astrology rules the heart, right? So it's really your life force. Without your heart, you can't exist. So it's the very heart of you. So it's no matter where the other planets are and other aspects of your chart, the sun always shines through. It's very noticeable. Very experienced astrologers, when they talk to someone for like half an hour or something and get to know them, they'll often say, "Oh, are you a Cancer? Or are you Virgo or whatever?" Because no matter what else there is, the sun always shines. Your personality, your heart of you always shines through. So the sun plays a very big part. The three most important things in your birth chart are the sun, the moon, and what's called your ascendant or rising sign.
Why is that important? The rising sign, then.
The rising sign is. I'll just explain what it is. At the time you're born, it's the sign that's rising on the eastern horizon. So it doesn't. The rising sign can be the same as if you're born at sunrise, then your rising sign will be the same as your sun sign. The rising sign is very important because the rising sign rules the first house of the chart, and the first house is about you, your personality, and all that. So your rising sign plays a big part in what you present to the world, rather than what's actually the heart of you. This is why some people they might be a Sagittarian by the sun sign, but they come across not very optimistic. They could doom and gloom or something. Yeah. And this is because they might have Capricorn rising.
It's got influenced by that other star sign.
Yes. Yeah. If you go to an astrological conference, where they often, they'll have lists of speakers and what they're talking about. What they put is 6 symbols at the start next to the person's name. For if it was me, it would, let's say, Kevin Rowan Drewitt, and then it would have the sun, the symbol for the sun, which is a circle with a dot in the middle of it, and then the symbol for Aquarius, which is zigzag lines, and then there'll be a crescent moon, and then with me it will be like the Roman numeral 2, because I've got moon in Gemini, and then it will say ascendant ASC Virgo, and the symbol for Virgo, and those 3 things tell you an awful lot about a person, even if although there's so much more to take into account, all the other planets and how they relate to each other, which house they're in. There's so much, but just those 3 things: the sun sign, the moon sign, and the ascendant, the rising sign. It tells you so much about the person, and that's why they put those things. It tells you, and you can say, "Oh, that's going to be an interesting speaker," or "They're going to bore me to death." So it's very important. In fact, there's a whole books just on rising signs that tell you, and there's chapters and chapters just about the rising sign. There's so much to it. This is the thing with astrology. I mean, I've been studying it now for 34 years, and sometimes I go and see a speaker and I feel like I'm only scratching the surface. The great thing about astrology is you never stop learning. There's so many different branches of it. There's so many different things to know, and there's new things being discovered all the time. Yeah. So it's a subject that you never can get bored of. There's always something new and refreshing to learn about. It's a fascinating subject. It really is. There's so much to it. There's actually a branch of it that I haven't mentioned, and that's it's called traditional astrology, right? Mm-hmm. And this only uses the 7 planets of antiquity: the sun, the moon, and then Mercury out of Saturn. The 7 lights that you could see in the sky, the 7 planets. And what would happen is a person would go to an astrologer. This I'm going back about 400 or 500 years now, right? And they would go to the astrologer, and they would say, I've lost my horse. Where is my horse? And the astrologer would look at the time that the person asked the question, and they would then erect a chart, and they would read that chart to answer the question. It was a bit like doing a tarot reading doing a rune reading, and that's what traditional astrology is. It's specifically asking an answer to a specific question, a specific time and place and date and time. And there are astrologers that specialise in this, and there's a whole completely different set of rules to it. It's something that I don't do. For example, I've only ever done it once when we had a talk about it. I used to have a toy badger, and I'd lost my badger. And at this talk about it, Deborah Holding, her name was, and she said it has to be the question that's really, it has to be burning into your soul. What is the question? Well, it was the burning question.
Yeah, really important.
And mine is, where is my badger? Because I searched all over the house, so I couldn't find that damn toy badger. So I went home and I erected the chart, and just from the little knowledge that I'd been taught in that 2-hour talk, I worked out that the badger was underneath something in the dark. So I went upstairs, and the badger was under the bed, and and I'd looked under the bed and I hadn't seen it, but because I had that sort of knowledge that the astrology is pointing me, it's under the bed, I looked a bit harder and I found it. And that's the only time I've ever done that form of astrology. And I've told that story many, many times. And I do teach it because I do teach astrology. I'm a qualified adult education teacher, and I do a lesson on traditional astrology about it. And I say, if you want to learn how to do it, so I tell them what it's about, and I do my own experience of it. But then it's another years and years of learning how to do it. It's a completely different thing. But this was one of the reasons that astrology and science split during the Reformation, the sort of thing. Well, that sort of time, when science came to the fore, when science started to question, because up until then, it was religion ruled the roost, whereas science came in and started to disprove lots of things about religion. And, well, like I said earlier about Copernicus discovering that the sun went around the earth. I mean, Galileo proposed that and ended up in house arrest because of it. Yeah. It was very, very serious to go against anything the church, what the church said was the absolute truth. And science, when it started to disprove things, a lot of scientists got into a lot of trouble through this. Incidentally, just speaking aside, to show you how astrology is still around in other aspects. Have you heard of the Hippocratic Oath that doctors take?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Hippocrates was an astrologer, right? And he said that he had a whole set of rules about, like, you don't cut into the body when the sun is in that sign and all this, and and you should do things on a waning moon, because that way things are getting less rather than a waxing one. If you perform an operation when the moon is waxing, things are more likely to go wrong than if you do it on a waning one. To this day, when the doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, they're actually sort of making an astrological connection there. And in fact, until about the 15th, 16th century, to be a doctor, you had to study astrology. Huh? You had to have a knowledge of astrology as well as your medical And that, but obviously, you know, with the age of coming of science, that sort of separated away. But incidentally, the symbol for the BMA, the British Medical Association, is the caduceus. You know, it's a rod with two snakes.
Yeah.
Which is carried by Mercury.
Wow.
And the god Mercury carries the caduceus. So there's another astrological connection.
Shows all those roots and connections into the what I'd call the natural world.
Yeah. Well, you know, there was a time when astrology totally permeated almost every aspect of life.
Yeah.
But, you know, with the coming of the age of science, the good thing about the coming of science is that obviously the accuracy of showing the movements of the planets and all that has become an exact science.
Well, I was thinking that before when you were talking about even the utilities that we're able to use in astrology now that they wouldn't have had many years ago. So some of the more positives of technology, etc. You know, that can assist in accuracy.
Indeed, like I was saying earlier, when I started learning astrology, we had to do all the charts by hand. Yeah. Which you need an ephemeris that shows you all the positions of the planets. You had to do very intricate calculations, especially where you're east or west. You know, it's called the acceleration and all that. Very, very complicated. When I taught an astrology class for the Blackpool College. Blackpool and Fylde College, and I taught them for 8 terms. By which time I taught them everything that there was. That if you did the diploma in astrology, I taught them everything that was in that they would learn on a diploma course. So I said, "There's nothing more I can teach you," but I didn't actually teach them the calculation until the 6th term because it's so complicated. But fortunately now, with the internet, you can go on a thing called astro.com and you can put in your own details and out comes your chart within 30 seconds.
I kind of like that side of it as well. You know, there's so much now that people, we can do that in a weekend. We can learn that. I like the length of investment and time and passion that has to be put in because everything seems to be being shortened in the time we're living in. Now, how can we shorten that? How can we squash it and do it quicker?
Indeed.
Do it faster? So it's nice that you have to put that length of time.
That's technology coming in, though, in AI, everything. Things are evolving and changing.
And I think it's a little bit of mankind, to be fair, that they want things faster. The world we live in, everything's quick.
Well, it is indeed, isn't it? You know, fast food.
Yeah, and it's all these things, everything's quick. What I wanted to ask you about, Kev, actually is,
sure.
I know we mentioned Saturn a few times, and now I know very little about this, but it was discussed way ago in one of the podcasts we did in the early days about Saturn. And the theory that at one time Saturn was a second sun for the Earth.
Right. Well, I've not heard that.
Right. Okay.
Interestingly enough, if we want me to talk about Saturn, the thing about Saturn is it's the ringed planet. You know, Saturn is famous for its ring. Uranus has rings around it as well. Funnily enough, but because we didn't know that. In fact, we've only discovered the rings of Uranus since the Hubble telescope. You know the Hubble telescope in space.
Yeah.
That took very good pictures of Uranus, and you could see the rings around it. But there's another one. It's called, I can't remember the surname, but it's called the James something telescope, and that looked at Uranus with infrared and discovered even more rings around it. But getting back to Saturn, because Saturn's got the rings around it, we say in astrology that Saturn is the planet of restriction because it puts rings around you. Right. So, which it can be. Saturn is also known as Old Father Time and the Grim Reaper, and all this because Saturn traditionally is the planet of death. You know, people don't like talking about that, but I've got Pluto on the ascendant, so I tend to talk about life and death a bit more. But anyway, that aside. So Saturn is the planet of restriction, but often like I talk about, you need rules, you need laws, you know, and for your muscles to get strong, they need something to push against.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to the gym and you work out, your muscles get stronger, and you get stronger. You get stronger in yourself. That is a Saturnian sort of energy, right? If you're just left to sit around doing nothing, you'll just wither and die.
Yeah.
Saturn is the teacher, and it comes from the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
Because if life was easy the whole time, you wouldn't learn anything. You learn by your mistakes. I think it was Marconi who said, "I haven't had 1,000 failures. I've had 1,000 things of how not to do it, which has led me to the point of how to do it."
Yeah.
So this is about Saturn. Now, if we go on to Jupiter, interesting. Jupiter rules a sign of Sagittarius, and Jupiter, as I said earlier, is about expanding. It can be a bit OTT. If someone's having a strong Jupiter transit, they might start drinking too much, eating too much, exercising, doing too much, right? Yeah. Now, the reason for this is that Jupiter actually gives out more light than it receives from the sun, right? So the main theory is that Jupiter is a failed star. That Jupiter should have been a star, but actually it ended up being a planet. That is the sort of the main scientific. That's not an astrological thing. I mean, it's an astrological thing that we think of it as expanding and all that. But as far as science goes, scientists do believe that Jupiter was a failed star, that it should have been a star. So
what sort of sources would you look at in terms of people who have written books on astrology or done any sort of work that way that you would look and say that's a solid teaching or something you would look to, or maybe has inspired you? Is there anything like that along with you?
Right. Well, what books that astrologers refer to themselves depends very much on the sort of astrologer they are and what aspect of astrology they're interested in. The thing that I do most in terms of astrological work is that I do two things. One, I do birth chart, natal charts, which is where you draw up the chart of the person based on their time, date, and place of birth. It's very important to know all three of them, because that is your unique place. And unless two people are born in the same hospital at the same time, exactly, then everyone has a very unique birth chart. There's been lots of work done on twins and things, but I'm going off the point.
But that's interesting too.
So what I do, I have many different books. I mean, I've probably got about 30-40 books on astrology, on various things. Some might be about a planet, some might be about rising signs and all that. But the main thing that I use are Russell Grant, who is president of our club.
I'd be very familiar with that name. I'm sure he's listening.
He brought out about 20 years ago an astrological kit that's got all interpretations about the planets and the signs and the aspects and all that, and that is a very, very good basis of it. People tend to think of Russell as a bit of he's a personality and a performer, isn't he? And he is that. But he is a very, very good astrologer. And his book, there's also a very good book, Astrology for Dummies.
Right.
You might, there's this series of, computers, Windows for Dummies. And actually that book is very good. But I've got quite a few other books that I refer to. So I will tend to refer to all these different things, because when you do a chart, it's no good. It's not like, you take one thing and you write about that, and then you take one thing, you write about that. It's like a big jigsaw. The chart all interreacts. So although the sun might be in a certain sign and in a certain house, and those two things have their own meaning, if there's different aspects of other planets that are making connections to it, that has to be taken into account, and you have to put the whole thing together. And that is where the astrologer's experience comes into play, because anybody can, what we call, cookbook a chart. So, you get the chart, and you got the sun in Aquarius, and that means this, and you got the moon in Gemini, and that means that.
Would it be fair to say it's like anything where you could just do surface?
Yeah.
You're just doing the surface work.
Yeah. Although that information will be correct, it won't tell you how it all blends together, because, as human beings, we are the sum of our parts. We're not just this or just that.
Yeah.
And so there's many aspects of your personality, and that is all revealed in the birth chart. Often people, I've done charts with people, and then they say, "Oh, that's interesting that you said that I'm interested in this and that," because although I've never done that, it has always interested me. But there's lots of different ways. You can say someone is very sporty, right? The chart might say, they say, "Well, I don't do sport." I do. Well, what's your hobby? Oh, I like watching horse racing on the television.
Yeah.
So it can manifest in different ways. It's like I did a chart for twins, as I mentioned earlier, and they're very, very similar. Obviously, the chart's very similar because they're only born minutes apart. But even then, you can find little subtleties, little differences. But they both, I think they had a Piscean or a Neptunian influence, and one was an actor and another was a painter. And you think, well, acting and painting, they're completely different things.
Yeah.
But they're both Neptunian. Yeah. They're both ways of expressing your creative side, being an actor. Also, a Neptunian influence could be very into drinking and drugs, and it's escapism. Right. This is another thing of Pisces and Neptune. You could get, on one side, you could be very spiritual, and on the other, you could be very into drinking spirits.
Yeah.
but it's that Neptunian thing.
I had mine many years ago with a good friend of ours called Vivian, and her sister and she actually did what you explained with the birth chart for me. And I actually didn't look at it for a year. For some reason, I think I was moving and things like that. And I actually found it when I was moving, and it absolutely stunned me when I read it, because I felt like, number one, like somebody had looked into my soul.
Yeah.
And it actually also told me the last year I'd lived through, where I'd been sat with this book. But also it just gave parts of my personality that I thought, I've just never seen it written that way. For example, part of it was, you're good at ideas, coming up with ideas, but following them through, you quickly leave it and go on to something else, which is absolutely me, 100%.
That sounds very Geminian. I don't know. we talk about Gemini having a butterfly brain.
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, and I've got moon in Gemini, so I have that sort of influence myself. But doing natal charts is a very interesting thing, because especially if you know the person, it's a little bit harder, because it's how much. Well, hang on. I've told you that. We've talked about that in the past.
Yeah,
so
it's like with everything.
But I mean, the thing you have to do, the thing that comes down as astrology, you have to trust the astrology, right? And that is one of the hardest things to do. If there's some difficult thing, you might not want to do it. And I learned the lessons of this a long time ago. A good friend asked me to do their birth chart, and I left out all the bad things, or negative things, shall we say. And I gave them this. They read it. They said, "Now, where's the bad stuff?" And I thought that was wrong. So you have to put in, or sometimes, you might get depressed, or
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it was just a thought come back that when we spoke to medium Jenny Moore, and she mentioned about this, that with readings that there isn't always that flowery side. For example, somebody might have the father coming through to them for the message, and they might have had an awful relationship and all sorts, but actually bringing that through, and that truth that is for the highest good of that person.
Indeed.
So it's knowing that information, and I can totally feel where you're coming from with it, is also for the highest good. It's going to, to put it Put it out there.
That's true. The other apart from doing birth charts, the other thing I do is a thing called the solar return chart. Right.
What's that?
Right. If you have an accurate birth time, I mean hours and minutes will do. That's accurate enough. So if you know you were born at 2:10 in the morning or whatever, that's fine. Now that will be an accurate position of the sun by degree and minute of arc, right? If you understand what I mean, you know, part of a circle. So every year, either on your birthday or the day before or the day after, the sun will return to that exact point by degree and minute of arc, right? And that point is your solar return, because the sun is returning. In fact, this is where the expression "many happy returns" comes from. Oh. The sun has returned to where it was when you were born. You're getting another year. Wow. So that's where "many happy returns" comes from. But so if you know exactly the time that you were born, then you can. I mean, I do it on a computer now. I used to have to do it by calculation. You can draw up a chart for that coming year, and it will depend on also the place where you are. So although I was born in London, if I'm in Blackpool when my solar return occurs, I will do the chart for Blackpool, and that year shows you the areas of your life that are going to be the focus of that year, and that's a very useful tool to have.
Wow, I'd love to have mine done. I knew you were thinking that.
The thing about it, I mean, I remember doing a solar return for a friend about 4 years ago, and there was quite a lot of negative stuff in it, and she read it. I remember we were on the way to Bury Market, you know, so she read it. She read a solar return while we were driving, and she read it, and then she threw it on the floor in disgust, saying, I don't know, because there's quite a bit of negativity stuff in it. Yeah. But as the year went on, she said everything in that was true. She didn't want to hear it at the time, but it actually panned out. And she's not asked me to do a solar return since.
I remember in my astrological chart that was done for me, that something that would come out really strong on my health, which was inflammation of the bones and inflammation within my physical body. So that was on the health side. But then in a way, having that information can almost prepare you in a way to try to maybe minimize the suffering side on the health as well, and how that can influences you.
Well, in fact, that's another branch of astrology is your health. In your natal chart, the sixth house, which is the house that's below the western horizon, that is known as that. Although it's the house of work, as well, it might show. It's a house of service. It shows you where you like to serve people in a way, in your job sort of thing. But also, it's also the house of health, especially ill health. So if you've got a planet in the seventh house, like if you've got like Saturn in the seventh house,
that's man, yeah.
That would be very much a sort of either you could be restricted in some way through arthritis, for example, or some other injury or something like that. But funnily enough, again, with astrology, each of the 12 signs rules a different part of the body, and Capricorn rules bones.
It's interesting because when I was growing up, I broke my wrists 4 times, broke my ankles 4 times. I used to break stuff all the time, and we're growing up when I was younger. And when you read back on the chart, you sit there giggling and thinking, I've been through this. So I'm walking around really careful now, not doing any damage to myself.
Well, Saturn, as we said, it gives you structure. And the thing that gives a human structure is the skeleton. You know, it's the bones is the thing. Saturn actually rules the knees, funnily enough, and often people with a strong Capricorn or Saturnian influence have had problems with their knees. Aquarius rules the ankles, and like yourself, I used to sprain my ankles all the time when I was younger, and in fact, my ankle broke a few years ago, my left ankle, and it's still plated and pinned to this day. But it works. It works very, very simply, actually. Aries rules the head, and then Taurus rules the neck. Gemini rules the arms and the lungs, and so it goes on. Scorpio rules the reproductive organs, and Sagittarius rules the thighs, and Aquarius rules the ankles. Pisces rules the feet. So as we work our way down the body, but there's also astrological rules for, like I said, Capricorn rules bones and teeth.
I've had a lot of problems with teeth in my time as well, so that all makes sense.
Yeah. So there's all, and again, medical astrology. That's a whole other branch again, which I don't do. You can go to a medical astrologer and they will look at your chart in a completely different way.
What about Leos? What's
Leo?
Yeah,
to do with your mum,
Well, I was going through actually my thoughts, thinking, what signs have we not discussed? And I don't remember Leo coming up much in the stuff.
Well, Leo is ruled by the sun, right? And Leos like to shine.
Yeah.
Leos like to be the center of attention, and they're very much. Leos are very much sort of full of themselves.
Right.
And they like to impress. They like to be the life and soul of the party, so to speak. Obviously, a Leo with Virgo rising is going to be very different to a Leo with Leo rising.
Rising
sort of thing, and also the moon sign, and you have to take other things. But we have to. You have talking about Leo energy pure. The lion likes to be. They call it the lion, the king of the jungle. Although lions actually live on the plain, they don't live in the jungle at all. I don't know where that expression come from. We talk about the lion's share, don't we? A bit. So the sun is also about the ego. So often Leos have the biggest ego going. If we think of people like Mick Jagger. And Kate Bush, and these larger than life sort of personalities. That's your extreme Leo energy coming through. Yeah. In fact, if you've got no other planets making a connection to your sun, it's called an unaspected planet. So if you have an unaspected sun, the sun really shines through. In fact, the funny thing with unaspected planets is they work two ways. They can be the star of the show, or they can be totally invisible. Somebody who has an unaspected sun is Cliff Richard, for example. Now Cliff has always been the star of the show, hasn't he?
Yeah. He's very private though as well.
For years, yes. But a funny thing was Cliff was asked to do write the foreword to a book about another famous person. I forget who it was, and actually he's got this long paragraph, and it's all about himself. It's only in the last sentence that he mentioned the subject of the book, and this was his sun ego, his unexpected sun shining through. So Leos are normally very proud of their hair.
Yeah.
Right.
And your mum's a hairdresser, isn't she?
She
loves working with hair.
Yeah. So if normally if it's a man and he's gone bald, normally they'll find they'll grow a very beard, and they'll ask you to admire their, because they can't admire their hair. You can admire their beard. So that's very much the Leo way.
You touched on something there that come up earlier, because I know, knowing you, Kev, you got a passion for music as well.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting to know some of the names, say, for example, people like John Lennon, people like that. They're sort of, do you know any information about people you followed in music, or some icons?
Yes.
We would call them.
Funnily enough, in my astrology club, for the first meeting of the year, which is normally in February, we don't meet in January because it's too close to Christmas and the weather's bad and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And also, we wouldn't we normally have a speaker at monthly meetings, and the speaker might be from the club, or it might be a guest speaker. But we don't normally have a guest speaker in February because they can't get there because of the bad weather, and also if the weather's bad, we might only get a handful of people turn up, and it's very disappointing for somebody to come from Manchester or wherever, or Preston or something, to speak to only a handful of people.
Yeah.
Although they would still enjoy it, they might have done hours and hours of research and put forward a PowerPoint presentation. So what we tend to do in February is have a chart night, where what happens is I put together about 5 or 6 charts, and we put them on the screen, and we just talk about them. And because of excuse me, my knowledge of musicians and all that, I often tend to put up charts of musicians. So I do know quite a bit. John Lennon was a Libran, and he had a very forceful personality, which is shown in his chart. We do have an accurate birth time because he was born during an air raid in Liverpool. Wow. And although his mother didn't have the time, we knew almost exactly when the air raid took place. So we got an accurate chart for him. And funnily enough, I talked about solar returns earlier. Funnily enough, even after you die, the solar return chart still works. Do you get what I mean? So, so what I hadn't thought about this. I read this. I saw this on a website a few years ago, and I don't know how to go into this. There's in 1925, right, in America, an astrologer called Dr. Edmund Jones. He took a psychic, I'm sure this will interest you, right, called Elsie Wheeler. She was in a nursing home. She was in a wheelchair. He took her out to a park, and he gave her. He had 360 cards ready prepared, and on the back of the card was a degree of the zodiac. So he had 1 Aries, 2 Aries, 3 Aries, all the way 29 Pisces, 30 Pisces, right? Totally random. They sat in his car, and in the course of a day, I think they did it in four sessions, he would give Elsie the card, and she would hold. She wouldn't see it. It would be a blank card to her, and she would spiritually tell what she was seeing. Yeah. And Dr. Jones would write down and put it aside. Then he'd give her another card, and she would do it. And it would be like, a Chinese laundry, or it might be hunters hiding in the bushes, shooting ducks, or all sorts of different things. These were known as the Sabian symbols, and there's 360 of them, and she called them the Sabians because she thought she was channeling an ancient people called the Sabians, right? And Dr. Jones thought, well, that was an interesting experiment, and put them away and didn't do anything with them. And then years later, another famous American astrologer, Dane Rudyard, picked them up and wrote a book about them, and they've sort of carried on to this day. And the Sabian symbols can tell you a lot about a person's chart. For example, Princess Diana, her ascendant Sabian symbol is a diamond, a rough diamond waiting to be cut. Which you think about her, she was sort of a child's nanny, wasn't she? But she was sort of groomed into being a princess.
Yeah, very much.
Very much like a rough diamond being cut into something beautiful, sort of thing. Anyway, the person who's probably the most expert on Sabian symbols now is an Australian astrologer called Linda Hill, and she put on her website Elsie Wheeler's solar return. And I thought, that's strange, because Elsie Wheeler died in the 1930s. So I thought, how can she have a solar return when she's not alive? So I contacted Linda by the internet, and she said, "Oh yes, the solar return chart carries on even after you're dead." So I then thought, that's an interesting concept. I'll look at some famous people. So I did John Lennon's chart, and I looked up. I thought, what is the most famous thing that's happened to John Lennon since his death? And to me, it was having an airport named after him, Liverpool Airport.
Yeah.
It was become John Lennon. So I looked up the year that the Liverpool Airport was renamed John Lennon Airport, and I did John Lennon's solar return for that year. And sure enough, it was shown in the chart that was a year that it was going to be famous again.
Yeah.
There's several things in the chart that will show you if someone's going to be famous. And I did this. I did it for Mark Bolan, and I did it for Karen Carpenter and Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And in fact, Elvis Presley he had 3 years when things because he had that album out where they did orchestrated his song, and that brought him back into the public again, and of course they re-released some of his songs and they went to number one again. So he had that remix, didn't he, of A Little More Action?
Yeah.
Went to number one again. Again, in those solar return years, it was showed that he would be famous again in those years. There's various things, if the sun is in the 10th house. The 10th house is the one of public recognition. So if you've got the sun in there, it shows that person is going to be famous, if only for that year.
Whilst it just shows you sort of your legacy that you can leave behind, and it still influences the energy that even though you're not there in the physical, you're back in spirit, but that influence is still passed on and still continues that ripple.
Yeah. The Beatles actually has been quite an interesting thing. Lots of people have done all the Beatles charts, and they've done the charts of the Beatles fame and all sorts of things. But taking it on a very simple level, John Lennon, an Aquarian. In astrology, there's 4 signs that relate to the elements: Earth, air, water, and fire.
Yeah.
Right. Aquarius is an air sign, and John Lennon was married to Yoko Ono, and she was an Aquarian. So John Lennon was a Libra, which is an air sign, and Yoko Ono was an Aquarian, which is an air sign. So you have that compatibility that they both got the same elemental thing. Paul McCartney, a Gemini, which is another air sign, was married to Linda McCartney, and she was an Aquarian, so another air sign. So you got all that air. Also, of course, Paul McCartney being an air sign and John Lennon being an air sign, there was a compatibility.
Yeah,
there.
Same again.
And the air signs are very much about communication, so they were able to communicate and write together and all that. So on a very simple level, that's you could see some compatibility there.
Yeah, it's really interesting that when you go into that journey with people, and
on compatibility, I've only done a few charts, but there is a thing called a composite chart. So if you've got 2 people and they know their time, date, and place of birth, they've both got accurate charts, you can actually do a composite chart. You put the 2 charts together, make a third chart, and that third chart shows you the relationship. It doesn't tell you about the individuals. It tells you what their relationship will be, and that's quite interesting to do. I've done that a few times, but
I bet that could be quite interesting.
It can be quite interesting, but people don't tend to ask for it too much because they don't want to know.
Be careful what you ask for. You're going to get the truth.
There's also another branch of astrology called synastry, where you take one chart and you put that chart against the other person's chart. So let's say the house of relationships is the 7th house. So if the one person's sun is in the other person's 7th house, they're going to get on, despite whatever else is in the chart. That shows that they will get on because that there'll be a good partner for them. And and again, that is another branch of astrology that is very, very complicated.
Wow, I think it's been an absolutely amazing podcast. But if anybody's watching, is this a service that you offer openly? Do you have a website, or is this something that you just sort of do as a hobby, like charts?
Yes,
because people watching this will probably be contacting you. Can you do me the chart?
Well, I can tell you a little story about this. I was invited to give a talk at a conference in the Midlands in 1998, something like that. And I went down there and I gave an hour's talk about what I do, and I had a leaflet saying what services I do, and I had a load of people come up to me at the end and say, "Oh, will you do mine?" and all this and all this. And this was at the start of the summer, and I used to work in a school. I was a technician in a school, and so I had 6 weeks off in the summer, and I spent the whole of that summer doing charts because I had so many to do, and I did the first few and thought, great, now I can relax. Oh no, I get more coming through the post, and also like one person, I did 4 charts for them, then they asked for another 2, and it went on, and I spent the whole of the summer in the office doing charts, and it took me quite a while before I got my life back. But yes, I do charts for people, but I don't have a website. But if people want to contact me, is it all right for me to give out my email?
Yeah, we'll post it on the.
We can post it on the wherever you're listening.
Right, my email address is all lowercase. It's Kevin Rowan, the number 2 at hotmail.com. Okay. So that's how people can get in touch with me. But Northern Lights do have a website. If you put Northern Lights astrology, it will come up, and there's all about the group, and there's also copies of Icarus, our newsletter, to read, where you can read my predictions. And I write about the club news, about what speakers we've had, and we meet monthly. We meet at the Blackpool Cricket Club on the first Tuesday of every month in February to November. In December, we have a Christmas lunch at the Bedford Hotel in St Anne's, where we have a national speaker come.
Can anybody join the club?
Anyone can come to the club. It's open to anyone. We have complete beginners to professional astrologers within the club. So
sounds like a great community to be part of.
It's great. It's I've met. Well, we've had hundreds of people through the club. The club's been going along. It started in '92. But it was called the Amounderness Astrological Association before that, and it's been going a long, long time since the 80s, I think. And we've had lots of people, and we teach. I teach astrology from my home now. I don't teach for the college anymore. I teach just from my home, but we've got other people that teach as well, and. We're open to all sorts of things, and if you come along to the meeting, if it's your first meeting with Northern Lights, it's free. So there's a small admission charge, and we have a raffle and things like that.
Yeah,
I think we should get ourselves going.
I'm sure
it's very friendly. We're open, and we don't talk down to people or anything. And if someone's new to it and they don't, we tend to put them with somebody who does know, and they can sort of whisper in their ear, explain things to them.
And I'm sure a lot of people listening will be absolutely fascinated, because I know I am listening to all that. I thought, I want to know more questions.
There's so much in astrology.
And it seems really fun as well. It seems really interesting and invoking, because you're finding about yourself, and
we have a lot of laughs.
I bet.
Because it's quite amusing to some people who say, "Well, your chart shows very, very much as such and such." You got a strong interest in medicine and medicals and things. What do you do? Oh, I'm a nurse. Or say and everybody laughs. It's quite amusing that like that. Often. Sometimes we did this last year when we got 2 or 3 people are new to it, and they know their birth information. We do their chart. We put their chart up on the screen, and we all talk about it. You know, this was done to me at my second meeting at Northern Lights, and Barbara, the who was a secretary at the time, looked. She didn't know anything about me at all. It was my second time at the club, and she looked at my chart and said, "Oh, were you brought up by your grandmother who's a Scorpio?" And I was. And she
wow.
That still sends goosebumps to me now.
Yeah.
And she knew this just from looking at my chart, which I found, this was like, God, there's something in this.
The sweet spot. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Kev, for doing this podcast with us, for sharing your time.
It's been amazing.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been really, really interesting. I know it sparked off a conversation we had a few weeks ago, whenever it was, and we were like, oh. So we've been looking for somebody to talk about astrology for a long time on this podcast. So we're so pleased that you took the time. I'm sure everybody's going to really enjoy this episode. I know I have, and also Stephen, I'm sure you have as well. And,
definitely. I want to do another one. Would you be up for another one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's really opened my thoughts to it. And interest as well. So thanks.
I have a book.
Oh, yeah.
So I read the runes as well.
Oh, amazing.
I'm a rune master. And although the ancient Norse people, they didn't have Western astrology as such, but they did associate each rune with a planet. And if you know what that planet is about and the sign that it rules and what that's about, and you know what the rune is about, you can combine the two together, and they fit absolutely perfectly. Which is why I've written this book, which is available on Amazon. And
oh yeah, and what's it called?
It's called Astrology of the Runes.
Oh. Amazing. Yes, we'll post all that information as well. So if you wanted to find it on Amazon or...
So it's on Amazon and W.H. Smith's and all good booksellers.
Amazing. It's good.
eBay, it's available as a... is it Kindle?
Kindle, yeah.
It's available as a Kindle book as well and all that. So if you put Kevin Rowan Drewitt into a Google search, this comes up as the first thing.
Yeah, and then we'll also put your email as well on the details wherever you're listening or watching to this podcast. So thank you very much for everybody who's been listening, watching. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll keep on having some fantastic guests like Kevin today. We'll keep it going. So thanks so much.